Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Even Your Dynasty show. It is Wednesday morning at the time of this recording, and we're going to talk a little bit about how the Buster Posey hiring as president of baseball operations has kind of a lot of parallels to the 49ers when they hired John Lynch. Now, it's not a perfect comparison because, at the time when the Niners hired Lynch, it drew a lot of criticism. This one's actually being mostly applauded, I feel like, from Giants fans. But when they hired Lynch in for the 49ers, it did get a lot more pushback. Now, a lot of people were excited because at the same time, they were also hiring Kyle Shanahan, who was very highly regarded. So, like I said, it's not going to be a perfect comparison, but there are a lot of parallels between the two of them. So, we're going to kind of dive in on kind of what I see there and how I think the Giants are really trying to do something similar to what the Niners did, back in 2017. But before we dive into that, as always, if you guys do enjoy the content and the videos we put out, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel. It helps a lot with channel growth and the algorithms and all that good stuff. We made it to 750 subscribers by the end of the season, which is awesome. Basically doubled up the subscriber count during the season. The goal now is to get over 1,000 subscribers before the end of the off season and before opening day 2025. So I appreciate all you guys for helping us make that happen. We're going to continue to put out videos every week. I'll probably we'll usually do our live show still, and then every week, and then probably put a couple more videos. And then I have a lot of goals for different interviews and things like that. So we have a few guests that we're hoping to get on in the coming weeks. So we're going to keep working on getting some people for those. But like I said, if you guys can, please hit the subscribe button. It helps a ton. And we will hopefully do one more live video this week. The Farhan one, the Farhan Posey one we did on Monday. That was kind of a special extra one because of, everything happening. We'll hopefully do another one tomorrow where we're going to dive in a little deeper on possible GM candidates and things like that, and do probably like an off-season preview for the Giants on our live show tomorrow. So, but back to the video at hand. The first thing that I see the parallel between the two is just an image. As far as he's very professional, he's very well regarded, especially by Giants fans. Former player, they're going to look at him as he's going to be kind of the face of the franchise going forward. And while Kyle Shanahan really, the buck stops with Kyle in Santa Clara, John Lynch is the one that oftentimes is getting out in front of the media. He's the one talking about a lot of different things that they're doing. They've made him kind of the face of the 49ers in that regard. I could see Posey being a similar, almost buffer for the owners. And yes, he is a minority owner, but I could see him being kind of a buffer for the Johnsons, where he's going to be the face. He's going to be the guy out in front of the public, kind of how Larry Berry used to be the guy out there before he had his his issues, where now they kind of try and hide him more in the background. But I could see Posey being kind of a similar presence where he's going to be out in front of the cameras. He's going to be out in front of the media. He's going to be out in front during the offseason. Like, he's going to be the face of this team going forward. The second thing is he's a perfect person to kind of articulate and give the team a vision and a direction. I think Greg Johnson referred to him as the tip of the spear. You could call him as the captain of the ship, whatever you want to call him, whatever analogy floats your boat. He's going to be kind of the guy out in front, making the, big picture direction of the team. Now, one of the concerns I do have is he is going to have to get some good personnel people around him, similar to how John Lynch went and got Adam Peters and Ron Canthron and Martin Mayhew and a bunch of really good personnel people he surrounded himself with. Buster Posey's going to need to do a lot of the same, and we'll dive in on some of the different GM candidates, but there are quite a few good ones out there. Now, I love that Pete Patilla is going to stay within the organization. It'll be interesting to see what kind of role they draw up for him. I understand kind of the getting him out of the GM role. I'll be interested to see if they're going to put him in some kind of role where he's overseeing some kind of scouting or the minor league development or whatever they end up deciding for him. He has a really good background in player development going back to Houston, as well as we saw a lot more aggression with the Giants farm system when he got hired in after Scott Harris departed for Detroit. Um, I could see him being really successful in a role like that. So I love that they're keeping him around, even if it's not in the GM role. That was kind of a thing where I wanted to see him stick around. I've already been seeing things like people bringing up Brian Sabian. I think John Shea sent out a tweet or put out an article yesterday that mentioned that Posey's probably going to reach out to him. And I love that they're doing the whole nostalgia thing. I just don't want them to go too heavy into that. I think it is important that they get outside voices in with the organization, get some, people with different perspectives, and not just go full on back into what they were pre Farhan. I do understand that Sabian, part of the reason he left was probably because he felt like he wasn't heard and his voice was, kind of just ignored with all of his experience. So I think in like an advisor type role, it would be really useful to have a guy like Brian Sabian back. Posey clearly values scouts and not just the analytics. He does understand the analytics and that he's going to use them. It's like he said yesterday, they're here to stay. They're not going anywhere. Myself and many others have said it's not that we have any issue with using the analytics. Like they absolutely need to use them, but it's the over reliance on them that I think a lot of us don't agree with, and the complete dependency on them. That's my issue with those. And I think you should bring in guys like Sabian, who has just an extensive scouting background, and try and pair him up with a GM that's, maybe getting hit. You have him, and you have a few of these other guys. I don't know if they'll look at guys like Coletti or Billy or Bobby Evans. I don't, as well as Sabian, to come back with him, but I do think they should go look at getting someone like a Billy Owens or Paul Taboni or something like that. Get a different perspective in the organization, good balance, and I do wonder if Posey's goal is to do this long term, or if it's kind of he wanted to step in, get the ship pointed in the right direction, and then have someone that he trusts to turn it over to in 3 to 5 years. So that is another question I have. The other thing with Posey, I do kind of wonder if he's going to be able to separate, and Dan mentioned this the other day on the live show, if he'll be able to separate personal relationships. He did play with a lot of these guys, Yaz, Flores, Wade. There's guys that are free agents, guys like Brandon Belt, who he voiced should have been probably playing on a team last year. I just hope he's going to be able to separate those things. I think he will. And I think the further removed he gets from his playing career, he won't have any issues there. But it's always going to be a concern until he proves otherwise, which, he has the opportunity to do that as soon as this season. So we'll kind of see there. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, though. I'm not going to sit there and say he won't. It's just something that's we should be mindful of. Um, but another thing that he's got going for him, similar to Lynch, is he's very relatable to the players. Greg Johnson mentioned how he quote speaks their language. We saw it get the Chapman deal across the finish line. Hopefully, we're going to see it with other deals when they're recruiting other players. That'll be something that I think him and Lynch have share uh, and have a lot in common in that regard. So we'll see how much of an impact that has, but he's super well respected around the league, both by agents, by players, coaches. Buster Posey is one of those people that everyone around baseball will tell you is incredibly bright, and you've already seen kind of this huge outcry of support around the game for this hire, where a lot of people think he's going to be awesome at it. And you don't always get that when it's just like, former player becomes, president of baseball operations. There's usually a lot of pushback in situations like that where he didn't really, cut his teeth in the front offices or anything like that. He came back, became a minority owner, spent kind of a year being a little more involved, and now he's the president of baseball operations. So normally you get so much pushback, and it's kind of crazy because around the game there's not been a lot of that yet, at least not yet. So we'll see, but he has got a ton of respect. You listen to how Chapman kind of talks about him. A lot of these players understand that Buster Posey is a winner. He wants to do what he can to build a winner. And yes, he made comments like we're in the memory banking business. Like that's the reality. I mean, it's similar to I didn't give Greg Johnson as much crap as a lot of people when he made the break even comments last year, but similar to that where it's not necessarily the exact thing someone wants to hear where they say like, "Oh, we want to win," and that's only it's not the most important thing. It's the only thing. But he's right. Like this is what baseball is about, and I think that's kind of alluding to the fact that he's saying, "I want to have like greatness on this because if we're winning, if we're competing for championships, if we have great players, we're making memories for people." So like he understands the importance of that. Um, so, I mean, those are kind of the main things that I see between Posey and Lynch, where it feels like on one hand, it is a little bit of a popularity move. Like it is doing something to kind of please the fan base, but you're also doing it with a super smart person, a person that's going to be, you know, that can get out in front of everybody and not just piss off the entire fan base because the reality with a guy like Farhan is so much of what he did in the last couple years, it just always felt like a used car salesman. And whether that's, whether some of it was just GM talk, I tried to kind of weed out the things that were more just general GM speak, where, they're saying, oh, yeah, we're done, signing people. And it's like, no, every GM does that. I never got really upset with Farhan and things like that. I tried to be as fair as possible with a lot of the things he said. But when he comes out and he's making comments about like, oh, we're going to give Luciano at bats for some, uh, we're going to give Luciano at bats for that's why we traded Jorge Soler and or we can't re-sign Crawford because Luciano's our shortstop. And then everything he does just completely disregards those comments that he makes. It's like those are the things that used to drive me insane. He would make comments he didn't have to make just to end up lying about it. So those were the things that really drove me insane. I don't think Posey's going to do that. One of the different things you're also seeing with Posey already that it's being reported is he's going to let Bob Melvin do his job. Like he's going to let Bob Melvin decide the lineups, make in-game decisions, do what a manager is supposed to do. He is no longer just going to manage people, which I made that comment. Dan made that comment. A lot of us made the comment that the lineups, when everything in all the in-game decisions and the lineups and everything fall in line with what everything they did under Kapler, there is one there's one common denominator there, and that was Farhan. So we said it was probably coming from the top, and a lot of people pushed back saying, no, it's Melvin's terrible. And it's like, well, maybe Melvin isn't as dumb as people think, and he was just doing what he was supposed to do from Farhan. So maybe Melvin's bad again next season. Maybe he's not. He's got a lot of track record. I think he's at least deserves to go into next season. Everybody should try and give him a little bit of a clean slate. And let's let Melvin, succeed and fail on his own accord and not according to whatever the numbers tell him to do and whatever the spreadsheet tells him to do. So I do want to try and encourage people to give him a fair shake next season. We'll see what comes of that. But I did find that funny that that information came out when for 5 years myself and Dan have been saying that Kapler / Melvin are nothing more than figureheads for Farhan, and we just got proven right. So I love to hear Posey say Melvin's going to get to go do his job. So I'll get off on that tangent though. Tell me what you guys think. If you guys see a lot of the parallels between Lynch and Posey in this hiring. Like I said, we're going to dive in more on the GM talk and things like that in the offseason preview. We saw, what the 4 arbitration eligible players, what their projected salaries are for next season. So the Giants are going to have some decisions there. So we're going to cover that, the payroll, all the different things. Not going to cover a whole ton on who they're going to target. We may talk about different needs as far as the preview goes, but we're not going to dive in too deep on like the different players they should be really focusing on. That'll probably be a little bit later in the offseason, or listen to some of the previous live shows. We've kind of discussed some of those people that we feel they should go after. So that's all I have for today. Go Giants. We'll see you all tomorrow. And yeah,